and welcome to the Book Bunch. My name is Sam. It is so great to have you guys here for another video. Today we are going to be talking all about some non-fiction books that I've read recently. These are all Christian books. One of these, however, is more like just general advice for anyone rather than specifically Christian focused. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I wanted to let you guys know, in case you don't already, in the description box below, I actually have links to my Instagram and also my Goodreads if you wanted to check them out and follow along, because I do put up like written reviews on those two platforms. You guys can see my ratings, what I'm up to when I'm not just reading, because I do post different things here and there on Instagram, share some exciting science fiction, fantasy, Christian fiction news that is happening around the place and things like that. I have also thought about how would you guys feel if I started a little segment on like the Christian fantasy news kind of thing. Let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in that. But yes, back to normal programming. The first book I read is this little gem called Capturing God. I picked this one up, and the next one I'm going to talk about, Truth on Fire, from the Good Book Company. They are Australian, but they do also have a US website and everything if you are in the US. But yes, Capturing God. This is just a little 2-page book, very tiny, very quick read, that is all about the image of God and how he chose to be portrayed. And it talks a lot about the image that we see a lot of Jesus on the cross, and how that is how our whole relationship with him is based off that image and what that really means. And it goes through the story in Luke of Jesus hanging on the cross and what he gave up for us and all of that kind of thing. It was really profound, really good. My only dislike about it was that you'd be reading and it would be like he'd get halfway through a point, put in a subheading, talk about something that's mildly related, and then jump back to bring the two things together, which I did find a little bit jarring, but overall the writing was very good and the message was really great too. This is meant to be something that you share around to people who are new to the faith or might be seeking God. It's set up in that kind of format in case you are interested, but I gave it a read. It was good. It's also super cute and little, and I think the cover is really, really beautiful. So that is Capturing God. Then we had Truth on Fire, which this book, it's written by a man named Adam Ramsey, who is actually a pastor here in Australia in the Gold Coast, which is like an hour and a half, 2 hours from where I am, which is really exciting to me because I could hopefully go visit his church one day. But this book was absolutely amazing. I don't know if I've ever read a Christian non-fiction book as good as this, honestly. There was only one single sentence in this that I didn't agree with, that just didn't quite sit with me very well, but the rest of it, 100%, felt like the Spirit was talking to me directly. It was such a informative read, and I really do recommend it no matter where you are in your faith, especially though if you are kind of stagnant or just feeling like there has been a lot of silence from God recently. Like you're in one of those seasons where it is dry and you feel a little bit alone, maybe even a bit abandoned by God or forgotten, because this talks about those seasons of life in such an inspiring way. It also had some amazing lines in it that were just like pure gold, one of which I put up on my Instagram. But the quote says, we often think that the opposite of God is Satan, But that's not true. The opposite of Satan is another angel, because all Satan is an evil angel. There is nothing opposite to God. There's no being opposite to God, because he is it. There's nothing that compares to him. And I think that is so true. And I so had that previous thought in my head of like, well, obviously the opposite of God would be Satan in the like powers and forces and stuff going on. But that's not true, because Satan was created by God. He's a step below, and that is why God so easily has the victory over him, and why we don't need to be afraid. And I think that is just so awesome to just think back on those kind of things and just have it said to you in a new way. It was really, really profound, and I loved it. And again, stunning cover. So definitely go check out the Good Book Company. This is not sponsored or anything. I just think they have really good resources that people probably don't really know that much about, like that they're around. Because I know they supply books to other bookstores, at least here in Australia. Like you can get some of their stuff at Koorong and stuff. But sometimes I like going straight to the source. And yeah, they have their own website if you wanted to check it out. But definitely recommend this to every Christian. Like honestly, you guys should go pick it up. And I'd love to talk to you about it too, because it was so like profound that I just, yeah, I would love to talk to somebody about it. And then we've got All Flame by Andrew Arndt. I think that's how you say his last name. I'm not 100% sure. This book, I was expecting to be really good, and I was hoping it would be really good, because I was really looking for a good read on the Holy Spirit. But I don't think this hit the mark for me. I think he just has slightly different like denominational beliefs to me, or I don't know, he holds emphases where I would not. Like in a lot of his examples, he talks about like the saints and those kind of things, or he references these people called, I'm gonna hang on quickly check so I don't stuff it up. There's these guys in this that he references, this thing called the Sayings of the Desert Fathers, which I'd never heard of before. And it's this like old thing which talks about these basically like original, I'm gonna say they're Christian, but I don't know if they actually are meant to be, but they're like monks from like thousands of years ago. And everyone is called Abba such and such, whatever their name is. So there's like Abba Joseph, Abba John, Abba whatever. But that just didn't sit well with me, because like I know that it can be used as a generic term for father, but I feel like when you're trying to be someone of faith, you should be more aware that like to a lot of Christians, like Abba is specifically God, because in the Bible it calls him Abba Father. And I feel like maybe they're putting themselves on the same platform, or other people are putting them on the same platform, and I don't like that. It's like I don't like when churches call their pastors father, because that's not your role. Like that's God's role. He is the father. But again, that might just be a personal preference of mine. But yeah, I just feel like he's maybe more of that Catholic side of the Christian faith, which is fine. Each to their own. I'm not hating on Catholics or anything. It's just I don't agree with 100% of all of their stuff. They probably don't agree with 100% of what I've been raised to believe. That's why there's different denominations, because everyone has slightly different interpretations and all of that kind of thing. But yes, I only gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars in the end, just because, yeah, I didn't get as much out of it as I would hoped. It didn't speak to me in a super profound way, but there was definitely good parts of the book. Like he split it up into 3 sections, and the last section is him going through these 3 famous people's lives, and these are 3 people that were alive in the last 100 years who have made significant like changes or been significant figures of the Christian faith, and he uses them as an example of how the Holy Spirit can work, which I did like. I did like reading those little mini biographies in the back. My biggest qualm though with the book was more just like it was meant to be focused on the Holy Spirit, and I just felt like it wasn't. Like, I know that's weird, but I feel like he was so busy talking about Jesus and us and God and us that he didn't really actually go into the Holy Spirit and who the Holy Spirit is, what the Holy Spirit does for us, how important that relationship is, and that's what I was looking for. So yes, that is All Flame. Still recommend it. Like, you might get more out of it than I did, but it just fell flat for me, and I don't know if that's just because my expectations were off. So just be aware of that when you go into it. That was All Flame. And then finally I read The Wisdom House. This is the one that is technically Christian. Like, he talks about God and the Bible and his faith here and there, but it is mostly meant to be like a life advice book, or maybe even self-help kind of genre, because it is this guy named Rob Parsons, and he is writing basically these mini letters to his grandchildren, which is just him sharing his stories and his experiences, or people he's heard of, like other people's experiences, and he's put them into these little mini letters to his grandkids, where chapter by chapter it's a different like bit of advice or topic, and he just like shares these things with them in hopes that they will cling on to some of that advice and use it in their lives so that they can learn from other people's mistakes, which I think is really cool that someone's actually written a book like that. It was quite light-hearted in places as well, so it was a little bit funny because he was writing to his grandkids. Like, it was something that was very real rather than kind of clinical advice. It was just this guy chatting to his grandkids. And yeah, it's based around this idea that in his home he's got these two armchairs, and he is sitting in one, and he hopes that we are sitting in the other, or his grandkids are sitting in the other. And like each night he would tell them, or each visit he would tell them these pieces of advice. And yeah, he's compiled it all so that when he is gone, they still have this advice from him. And I think it's really cool. Do read it in the sense that like he is writing it in the perspective of writing to his grandkids. So there was some bits where he was saying like, oh, your grandmother and your blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wait a second. And then I realized it's because he was saying it as if it was to his grandkids. So it would have been his grandkids, grandma, and all of that kind of thing. But that's the only real like note on it you should know. I did super enjoy it. I still only gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, which is still a good rating. But the only reason it wasn't 5 out of 5 was it wasn't like super life-changing. It was definitely helpful. I definitely learned stuff from it and enjoyed my time, but it wasn't like the best of the best or anything. I did cry a couple of times though, because there was a couple of stories towards the end, or little things he would say that made me quite tear up. But yes, it was very good. I highly recommend it, especially if you are like myself in your 20s trying to work things out. Pretty much anyone under the age of 50 this would be good for, because you might not have lived through any of these circumstances. And yeah, it was really good, really helpful. I definitely recommend The Wisdom House. So that is whoops, my book just fell on the floor. That is everything for this week. I hope you guys have a great one. I'm sorry that right towards the end here, there is some obnoxious sounds coming from outside. It always happens when I come to film. Whoever construction people just decide to turn on all of their really loud tools. So I'm sorry about that if you can hear it in this recording. But yes, I hope you guys have a great week. Thank you for sticking with me as you have. Thank you guys for 300. That is such a blessing, and I hope that God continues to work in this space and this continues to be a light for him. I did also wanted to mention as well that I am currently going through the book of Exodus, and it is such a wild time as always. I'm having a really good time. My husband and I are going through the Bible this year, which is good. I always enjoy that. And God always does continue to reveal new things, which is always awesome. So I'm very grateful for that. And yes, if you have not read Exodus recently, I recommend going back and reading it. Same with Genesis, because like you kind of forget little details and then you reread them and you're like, wait, that's what happened? What the heck? But in a good way, for the most part. Yeah, there's some like crazy things that I didn't necessarily realize other times that I've read it. And I do enjoy Exodus, even though a lot of it is talking about the laws and like setting up the temple and all of that kind of stuff. I do find it so interesting how determined God was to be close to his people. I think that is so cool. There's all these just like one-liners that are really interesting and captivating to me. So I do recommend it, especially going through it with the eyes of the intimacy of God. If you look through those early books of the Bible with that in mind, you will find so many good gems in there. So I recommend that. That's what I'm reading in the Bible at the moment. It's really good. We're also reading it alongside reading the book called Providence by John Piper, which most of it has been pretty good. Some of the chapters are a bit hit and miss though, just because like he's got some different opinions, which again, it's so hard reading nonfiction about biblical stuff because people differ on things and have different interpretations. But also some of his writing can be a little bit dry at times because he is a little bit more theological in some areas. But I do like John Piper as an author in whole. I do enjoy picking up his books. But yeah, Providence for the most part has been really good. It is a bit of a chunky boy, so we've only been reading a chapter a night as we've been going through it, so it will last us about 50 something days. But yeah, it's good. Do recommend that as well. It's not specifically to be read alongside the Bible, like it is just a book, but we thought we would read that rather than doing a specific study this time round. But after Providence is done, I might go back into doing like a specific, like maybe 30-day Bible study or something like that to go along with the Bible reading. But I thought I'd just update you guys on that because you guys seem to like to know what I am doing in that space. So yeah, let me know what you're reading in the Bible at the moment. I'd love to know, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!